This is the story of Sultan Mehmed VI Vahideddin, the final sultan of the Ottoman Empire, the man who carried on his shoulders not a crown of gold, but a nation in ashes. He was born in 1861, the youngest son of Sultan Abdülmecid. He lost his mother when he was only 3 months old, and his father 1 month later. From an early age, he lived quietly, studying in Fatih Madrasa, devoted to faith and scholarship. He was known for his calm character, modest life, and deep knowledge of Arabic, Persian, and the Islamic sciences. For years he lived away from politics, under the watch of his elder brother Sultan Abdülhamid II, who gave him a mansion in Kangelki, the same building that later became the Turkish presidential pavilion. But destiny had prepared him for a burden greater than any other. In 1916, he became heir to the throne, and 2 years later, upon the death of his brother Sultan Mehmed V Vahideddin, he ascended the throne as Sultan Mehmed VI Vahideddin, the 36th and final ruler of the Ottoman Empire. He once said, "I did not sit upon a throne of feathers, but upon the ashes of a burning nation." The Great War had already shattered the empire. The Committee of Union and Progress, whose reckless policies had dragged the state into World War I, had fled the country after its defeat. By the time Vahideddin took power, the empire was disarmed, exhausted, and surrounded by enemies. The Armistice of Mudros, signed in 1918, allowed Allied forces to occupy the Straits, the Dardanelles, and the Bosphorus, once symbols of Ottoman pride. In a matter of days, British warships sailed through Istanbul unopposed, where Ottoman cannons had once roared in victory. When the fire of Yildiz Palace consumed his residence one night, the Sultan watched silently as the flames rose. His servant began to weep, but Vahideddin said softly, "Do not cry for my house burning. I am worried for my nation that burns," as Allied powers occupied one region after another. The Sultan struggled to preserve what remained of the empire. He sought peace, not out of cowardice, but because his people were weary of war. He placed his hope in diplomacy, even appealing to Britain, believing that calm negotiation could save the Ottoman lands. It was during this fragile time that he called upon Mustafa Kemal Pasha, his former aide-de-camp, entrusting him with a critical mission to maintain order in Anatolia. Vahideddin told him personally, "Pasha, you have served the state with honor. The service you render now may be the most important of all. You can save the state." The Sultan gave Mustafa Kemal full authority as Inspector General, hoping he would unite the resistance and bring peace. But history would take another turn. Instead of returning order to the empire, Mustafa Kemal established his own movement in Anatolia, independent of Istanbul, and soon in open defiance of the Sultan himself. By 1920, when the Ottoman Parliament in Istanbul approved the National Pact, Misakwai Milli, declaring the right of self-determination, Allied forces responded by fully occupying Istanbul. The government was paralyzed, and power shifted to Ankara, where the nationalist movement grew stronger. Still, Vahideddin refused to leave Istanbul. He saw himself as the guardian of the Caliphate, even ordering his guards to protect Hagia Sophia from being converted into a church by the occupying powers. He endured humiliation, isolation, and betrayal. When Ankara abolished the Sultanate on November 1, 1922, he was stripped of his title and left vulnerable to threats from both foreign forces and those who once called him their sultan. Newspapers insulted him daily. Parliament called him the Black Sultan. The same man who had once ruled the Caliphate was now painted as a traitor. Fearing bloodshed and desiring to protect the honor of his position, Vahideddin decided to leave Istanbul. He said, "Hijra, migration from a place where one cannot live in safety, is the sunnah of the Prophet." On the morning of November 17th, 1922, he boarded the British battleship HMS Malaya with his 10-year-old son, Ertugrul, leaving Istanbul behind. He took no wealth, no treasures, only his dignity. Before his departure, he returned his final month's salary to the treasury, saying, "I did not work that month. I cannot take what is not mine." He settled first in Malta, then in the Hejaz, and finally in San Remo. Italy, a sultan without a kingdom, a caliph without a home. He lived humbly, writing his memoirs and praying that one day he might return, but poverty pressed hard upon him. When he died in 1926, at the age of 65, his debts were so great that his coffin was seized by creditors. It lay unburied for days until his daughter sold her jewelry to pay his debts. The Turkish Republic refused to allow his burial in Istanbul. His body was carried through Beirut and finally laid to rest in Damascus, beside the Suleimani Mosque. Under the care of the Syrian president, the last Ottoman Sultan, buried in exile. He once said, "I made 3 mistakes ascending the throne: trusting those around me and believing in people's loyalty." But he also said, "We acted as lightning rods to protect the nation. Such was our destiny." And indeed, the thunder of history struck him so that others might be spared. With his passing, the Ottoman Sultanate and Caliphate, a 1,000-year legacy, came to its end. May Allah have mercy on Sultan Mehmed VI Vahideddin, the last shadow of the Caliphate, the man who faced humiliation with dignity and met his fate with faith.